So last video I kind of forgot to talk about my favorite error that happens, but I'm gonna come back, circle around and do it again really quick now. So we're gonna talk about exposure field recognition error. It's actually far more common than you would think, but let's talk about it.
So here's a knee x-ray that we took in lab today, and you can see a couple things going on. We got a knee x-ray, we have a, this right here is a line pairs per millimeter spatial resolution test tool. To check that, we have to zoom way in and you can actually see how many line pairs that you can make out, and that'll tell you your resolution for the picture. I also have a step wedge up here, which is also known as a pentometer, and it will show me my scale of contrast. So the white end is the thick end, it's attenuating all the radiation, and the black end is the thin end, so it's allowing all the radiation to go through. So we have a nice long scale of contrast. Technique down here in the corner, we use 70 at 7.1 with a DAP of 329, an EI of 424, and a DI of negative 0.71. So the reason why this DI is a little bit negative is because of this. So when it took the picture, this is my entire cassette, right? But I only used a collimated field of this. This is known as my field of view. When I took the picture, the computer kind of freaked out a little bit because it couldn't find where this collimated border is. So it just opened everything up on this side. In the process, it caused it to add a whole bunch of white values in the histogram. So if I pull up the histogram, you can see here's my histogram with this huge right here. Do you see this like light gray on the side? That's known as the smin. So the 0 to 16,000, this is our K-bit. This is how many shades of gray are available to the system. The 0 are the white values, so it's counting a lot of white values. The far end is the black values. We have a lot of like dark grays, right? And a lot of grays going on here. So the histogram is just a graphical representation of all of our values. But the fact that we have this big white values here is telling me that it's counting all of these values.
So let's talk about these terms, right? So I mentioned field of view. The field of view is on the image. When we have our picture of our knee, it was this green box right here, and then remember it kind of went further over and this was all white. So like this whole area right here was all white and no good. We don't want to have that. So I'm going to show you how to fix that. But in order to fix it, we have to change the field of view. There's these little boxes with a plus sign, at least on our computer, on how to do it. And it just brings it over and it shows the computer, hey, even though you think you need this whole area, focus in on this area. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press this region of interest button. It's like a really weird little eyeball on our computer. Again, I don't know what yours looks like. But what that is doing is it's saying, hey, you're calculating this many pixels. I want you to focus in on these many, and this is where I want you to focus on. This is now my region of interest for my histogram. So it's which pixels we're gonna count when we go to create our EI, DI in our histogram, our pixels. And then the VOI is our values of interest. This changes behind the scenes when I press this ROI button. So first I have to do the field of view button, change my collimation on the screen. Then I hit the ROI, and the ROI changes the VOI on the histogram. So the ROI is literally just like an action, and then the VOI is what's changing on the histogram. On the histogram, I have my smin, which I just kind of talked about, all those big white values that it's counting. And then we have our normal histogram, and then we have an smax, which is black. It's usually like the black going around the body part, you know, the area that had open collimation to it. The VOI says, hey, even though you calculated all of these values on their big screen, I want you to focus in on just these values to create your histogram, to determine if you're under or overexposed. So for example, the smin was high because it literally was counting all of these values right here. They were still on the cassette, and it's like, hey, I've got to count these values even though they're not really part of the knee x-ray. So they counted them, but it went to the smin, and it's not part of the, well, at the time it was. We're gonna change this, rewind. By changing the field of view and hitting the region of interest, it is going to tell the computer to get rid of this smin and not count it in the VOI as it was originally. And now it's just going to calculate the VOI over here, and that's going to change the histogram. It's going to change how the image looks. It's going to change the EI and the DI. Okay, let's do it.
So here we have, remember I told you I've not changed my field of view. Field of view is the size of the actual collimation, right? The field of view is wrong, exposure field recognition error, because it included all of this outside of the collimated border that shouldn't be there, which is why my smin and my white values are so high, which is causing my DI to be a little bit underexposed because I'm going to have more white values. White values are going to push it towards the negative part, right? Now watch this. So I'm going to bring in this little plus box. Remember, the plus box is the field of view. So I'm bringing that in to the field of view has changed. Notice that the histogram has not changed, nor has my DI. I'm still at a negative 0.71. Because all I'm doing is I'm just changing the actual picture and what I'm looking at, but I haven't changed how it's processing. Now, when I press this little guy, right, ROI, see, ours looks like a little eyeball. I don't know what yours looks like. It's going to change. Watch what happens to the knee. Okay. It changes the histogram just a tiny bit. It wasn't extreme because it really was a whole bunch of off values anyways. But do you notice that the DI now changes to 0.16? So now it's basically saying like, hey, now you have a closer to zero picture because I'm not counting all these negative white values, which brought it back up to a positive value. Well, closer to a positive value. Watch this magic though, okay? So if I bring my field of view, remember this is my FOV, down to an all black area, okay? Remember, black means that it's received a lot of radiation. Now remember, the histogram right now is still showing this entire field of view. I haven't reprocessed it yet. When I reprocess it and press this eyeball, for a region of interest, it's going to now say only process along these lines. Look at how much the histogram has changed. Now it's turned all of this as part of the smin. You can see that when I open this up, totally changed the way the knee x-ray looks, right? Crazy. In addition, you ready for this? If I had zeroed in on all black values, do you think I'm still going to be an underexposed? I think it was like a negative 0.16 or something like that. I am now, a 9.20, which is telling me that I'm not just a plus 3 DI means I'm 2 times overexposed. A plus 6 DI means I'm 4 times overexposed. So plus 9 means that I am 8 times overexposed. But my technique is the exact same. So what happened is I literally changed my field of view, right? I changed it to just this dark area, and then I changed the values of interest, and then I changed the region of interest by pressing this eyeball, which changed how it processed all of this. It thought that the histogram it was looking for was like the previous histogram, and instead it received just all these black values. And so that made it a very overexposed image. So again, if I zoom in on, say, a really white part, what's going to happen? See, again, I've changed my field of view, but nothing has changed because all I'm doing is playing with the collimation, right? Once I press this, the ROI, it's kind of like a filter, right? Once I press that, it should switch it all the way to the all the white values. See how we're going to have all these white values now, and a lot of grays. Bone is going to have a lot of different shades of gray. But we got rid of a lot of those black values. Watch what happens to the picture. Totally different in appearance, right? And remember we had a plus 9? Ugh. Now I'm saying I'm a negative 3, right? I haven't changed a single thing. This is all post-processing. I'm telling it where to process on the VOI. So if before it had this entire thing in the entire picture, it had a totally different values of interest in terms of how it was processing, and therefore it totally changed how it was giving us an EI, DI, and our histogram. Hope that helps. Bye.